Hi, welcome to Consciousness of Economics with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And if you're confused, yes, I did leave my old network and now I'm on the Project Camelot TV network. This is our pilot week and we are coming to you live. And I just want to thank Carrie Cassidy for having the courage to put this together so that we can bring alternative media and interviews and education and insights and information to the public in such a grander way. And I'm really excited to be actually a part of the Project Camelot Network. I have been watching Carrie Cassidy for 15 years. Some of us have been watching for a really long time. Today, the show that I'm going to do is kind of solo. I really never really get an opportunity unless you've heard me on some of the other radio shows and stuff I've been on. Never really get a chance to talk about who I am, what I do, and what I'm about. And I just want you to know, like, in the future, I'm going to have 3 kinds of shows on the Consciousness of Economics show. I'm going to have ones where I'm solo, which those will probably be periodically, and they will be probably shows where my guest had to cancel at the last minute, but it gives me an opportunity to showcase a whole bunch of work that I feel really does not get showcased out in the public, you know, topics that really don't get talked about, education. The second kind of show that I'm going to be doing is going to be with guests, and the guests that I bring onto the show, it's going to be like more of a coffee kind of show, you know, where you get up in the morning and you have a cup of coffee and you have a really great conversation. Just happens that it's after lunchtime, maybe close to dinner. I don't like to interview my guests. I like to have a conversation with them so that I can ask them questions that probably, you know, the mainstream would probably ask them. And get to know them better. I really like to make friends and long-term friends, so I look at this as an opportunity to build my network of friends through my guests. A lot of the guests that I will have on the show are really good friends of mine, and so keep an eye out at the amazing guests that I'll be having here in the near future. Also, too, I want to really give a shout out to my producer, Kat. And for doing such a good job helping me to put my show together. And I really, really appreciate him a lot. So let's see. Today, I really want to talk about, and the other third type of show that I'm going to be doing is I do urban farm builds. And I also am working on trying to build urban farm builds in at-risk communities. I also am working on building a full biodynamic farm as soon as I get the land. So there are going to be a lot of building and things that I'm going to be doing. And I hope to make whole shows where I'm not talking so much, but people can actually watch the builds. We may go over a certain amount of, say, 30 days of building and then put 1 hour and a half, 2-hour show together. And you get to see the whole build in the community, in people's backyards, and farms. So really excited to bring some of the projects that I'll be working on in the future also as an educational process for you. And if I happen to be on the ground anywhere else and I, you know, can get access and take video footage that I can put onto shows, I hope to bring that stuff to you too for other people that are doing just amazing work. Okay, so I really want to start out with talking about a lot of things that I don't talk about. One thing in particular that few people, maybe 5 people know about me. And I'd like to start out by telling a story. Well, about 3 years ago, I started moving out into the public more. And I was supported by wonderful people like Chief Charles Lightwalker, who is my regional chief of the Wolf Clan of the Pacific Northwest. He's our regional chief of the Free Cherokee. Amazing. Couldn't have made it this last 3 years without him. And so forth, I've brought my work forward in snake medicine. And you see snake medicine everywhere. It's kind of the work that I do traditionally. and using it to kind of help and cure and do a lot of things for the earth and plants and people and animals and soil. For a long time, I called what I do energetic and structural medicine. And 4 or 5 years ago, I went back to school and got my biodynamic certifications and farming work so that I could actually learn how to make medicines for the earth. And that has led me into doing a lot of big ceremonial work with First Nation people. And one of the First Nation, two, I'll announce, is Marshall Jack. He is a medicine man elder of the Paiute Nation. And also Bavado, or Rainbow Thunderheart. He is a Shoshone medicine man. And so I've done a lot of studying with Bavado, and in particular a year ago. So over the last 3 years, I've been kind of coming out of the closet and doing more work long distance, and kind of starting to explain to people who I am on this planet. And for most of my life, I was always taught to be quiet about it, to be secret about it. There are lots of witch hunts out there. People are afraid of things that they don't really understand. I came in the second big wave of star kids. So I am an official star kid. I am a star seed. And I came here in the second wave. The first wave, they're about 10 years older than me. And then a second wave, we came to try to start helping stabilize energies here. The issue is that this is a really hard planet. It's a really hard consciousness, a really hard slave system to be involved with. So a lot of the first and second waves haven't made it. They've either been murdered, held captive by the government, especially people like NASA, used in special programs to harm and control other people. A lot of them have committed suicide. Many of them, ended up being experiments in mental hospitals, like my mother. A lot of really frightening things. So when you come to this planet, it takes you a long time to figure out how kind of to be human, how to act human. So obviously people that know me from my past know that I was just never normal. And so now you know why, because I was never really human before. It's taken me a long time to figure out what human means. So a lot of star seeds or star kids, obviously the first and second wave of us, this path has been really, really hard. Very few of us have made it. Very few of us have actually stepped out into the public. Very few of us are talking about it. And I just feel more than ever, it's super important to explain so that people aren't crucifying us. People aren't, harming us because we're trying to do beneficial things for the planet. So because of my family, and even though I'm a star seed and a star kid, I was born into two bloodlines, one from my real father who did not raise me, and one from my mother. And so then I was born into that as well. So I grew up really not normal. My family talked about beings who live on this planet with us that people consider kind of controversy and can't find proof. It's because these beings come in and out of dimensional doorways from other places and time continuums. And some come here just to eat. Some like the vegetation foliage and, to be even harsher, some of them like to come and eat people. So that's a whole other conversation. So I was raised with people who understood what it was not to fit in, but had power within them that it was impossible to contain. So my mother was basically kidnapped when she was around 18 years old by a old blue blood family. Probably, we suspect cabal. Most of my family's dead now. Been kind of died from crazy cancers due to a lot of exposure, living in places where there is a lot of food growing, exposure to DDT and other harsh chemicals. And eventually they succumbed to terrible cancers and have died. So I'm pretty much alone in the world these days, which is all right. Hold on, I have a message. Let me give you a little, so my mother was kidnapped, and, her and this man were married. She thought she was getting her happy princess ever after, got her back to the East Coast, and they immediately put her in a mental hospital. We're not sure exactly how long. My grandmother did not talk about this until 5 years after my mother died. My mother died in 1999. So the mother I was raised with was not the mother who, or the person that she was before what happened. I came like 10 years, 11 years later. And my mother, even though she had, like long-term personality, residue, identity complications due to being given electroshock therapy and drugged and experimented on for, we think, up to 6 months. And then, she was sent back to my grandmother. So even though that happened to my mother was still a very powerful woman from an old bloodline of healers, shamans, prophets that we come from. It's a women's lineage on my mother's side, and we pretty predominantly only birth women. Mostly men have to be married in our family. There have been a few men that have been born in our family, but it's pretty rare. And then they end up going on to have lots of girls in their families. All the same, whether blonde or brunette, and we all have really curly hair, and we all look pretty much identical, which is a pretty interesting trait. So even though my mom was fried, her personality was fried, her abilities never died. No matter how they tried, they never died. So my mother had an elfin energy, like an herbalist, plant medicine person. And she could literally get zucchini plants to grow taller than people in sand. So she was totally gifted and continued to live out her life using her gifts, even though she wasn't able to really be socially kind of interactive. My grandmother, that was my mother's mother, was a full-on prophet, legitimate prophet by real world standards. She was a prophet based on our bloodline. And the way that it goes in these kinds of bloodlines and families, there's always a shamanic person born, then there's a prophet, and then there's a shamanic person born, and then there's like a prophet. I got to the end of the line, and I think because of my starseed, where I came from, I got both. And since I haven't had kids, I probably will remain with both. I got the shamanic and the prophetic abilities. And in the shamanic abilities comes that herbal medicine, that plant medicine, as well as being able to travel other worlds and heal. So my grandmother decided to go into the Pentecostal church faith pretty young. She felt that going into the church, I think early on, even though she probably would have never admitted to this, but going early on, she felt like it kind of created safety, and it kind of protected the family, gave us a real world kind of identity so that we could be strange. In the Pentecostal church, those people are crazy. In the South, they use snakes. They're snake handlers, right? They do a lot of dancing. There's really significant shifts in people's energies field. I've seen people healed of things that would just blow your mind. When I was 6 years old, every summer I went down to California and I spent it with my grandmother and other family members down there. And I, every Sunday, always went to church, always was in the big church. Wasn't really good at, kids' Bible study, was a little too awake and aware. But I would sit in like these, 5,000, 10,000 congregational churches, and my grandmother was a bona fide prophet. She received messages. She let people know about these messages verbally and loud in the church as they came in. She would go to the front of the altar and she would pray over people releasing demons. And people in the church saw these things leave people. Big clouds with eyes. People can say whatever they want to say about this paradigm, but they do not understand what's going on this planet. So every year, every Sunday for 3 months, I would go and I'd watch my grandmother release demons out of people. And I also watched her do prayer vigils in the church prayer area. And she would do these prayer vigils until people were healed of whatever they needed to be healed from. So that's my grandmother. She also somehow did dream prophecy through the Bible and through other means. And regardless of how she chose to use her abilities, choosing to use the church because she was a good fit for it, she never waned on her abilities. She always used her abilities to the fullest extent. Her mother, my great-grandmother, so you can kind of see from my women's line that there's a little bit of snake medicine in there just on the bloodline. So my great-grandmother, there's a really good story my grandmother tells about her. And they moved to the backwoods of Colorado. My grandmother and my grandfather, great-grandmother and great-grandfather were lucky enough to have not a wealthy, kind of a poor, but a fairy tale love story, serious. And my grandfather worked on the railroad, and my grandmother was tough. Great-grandmother, her name was Billy. Her name was Wilhelmina, but they called her Billy because she was tough. And my grandmother tells a story about they moved to this backwoods cabin, and they were building a small golf course because my great-grandfather liked to golf on his off time. And my great-grandmother, held down the fort while he was away and raised my grandmother and her brother. And after about a year, my great-grandmother was probably to this day the most powerful person I have ever seen on this planet with her abilities. She could walk up to people and touch them and heal them. Just heal them, point blank. So because she wasn't an indigenous person, but she had a very strong shamanic ability, she always talked to animals, and she always worked with medicinal plants, and she always used altered states. She understood this power from early on, and it was natural in her. She never went and learned it. She actually went and got a college degree, right? Didn't teach her how to do her work, but then she went back to doing that work, even though she got an education. So here we are back, in the middle of Colorado in a cabin. And turns out that they bought a cabin, piece of land, that was sitting on a huge den of rattlesnakes. So early on, like the cat's gone, the chickens are gone, like all this stuff and my great-grandmother starts to notice. And as she starts to notice, she starts to feel the energy underneath the house, and she starts to be able to go down in there and see what the heck's going on. So from that point on, she was really worried about her children being bit by these rattlesnakes. So she told them that they really needed to leave. And every day she'd get up and she would tell them, you need to leave. You need to find another home. Then finally, it came down to where she said, you need to leave or I'm going to kill you. I'm done. I've asked you many, many times to remove yourself from underneath our house because we don't want you here. And I've spent a year talking to you about moving on, but obviously you're not listening. So one morning, my great-grandmother, Billy, takes my grandmother and her brother over to this tree, like pretty far away under the shade with little lunch pails. And she tells my grandmother, under no conditions do you leave until I come back and get you, because I have to deal with the snakes, the rattlesnakes underneath the house. And so it may take me days. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I can't talk to you while I do this, so you need to stay put under this tree. And here's plenty of food in your little containers, you know, water and whatever else you need. And I do not want you to leave this tree. So my grandmother basically said that they sat and they watched her crawl underneath the house and literally bring up snakes, snakes after snakes after snakes, rattlesnakes, and literally chop their head off. And she didn't get bit. Hundreds of snakes were pulled out of this den. She actually talked them into coming up, and she did things that made them kind of pissy to come up. So, but none of them reared up against her. So that kind of goes to, that's why I always tell people, like, it's the story, I think, of where my snake medicine legacy starts. And working with the natural world and trying to, you know, not go out and outright murder, give them an opportunity, just like you would give a person to leave the scene. And then if they choose not to leave the scene, then they, you know, they get to experience consequences. So anyway, a little bit of story about that. When I was age 4, I had some really, really intense fevers. It is a time period where the energies here on the planet from my dad's family and my mom's family, and then what I came here with as a star being, kind of collided. And it was a really tough year because these really intense fevers and these huge, like, cellular changes that my body was going through. And in some cases, I almost, you know, pretty much didn't make it. There were a few times where they even tried to take me to the doctor, and there was just, the doctor would send me home saying that there's not much more that they can do, that, you know, you just have to prepare for kind of the worst. So growing up, at age 4, I started having these burn stigmatas that, yeah, all stigmatas, like the real stigmatas, all smell like roses. The burns would burn through my feet, and there would be symbols printed on both feet. And same symbols, and it happened over 3 times. So after that happened, I really kind of had a big shift, and I really started working with insects. And so much so that I used to raise bugs from the dead. You know, I had my little jars, and after that point in time, which is a typical star seed, which is a typical star kid, if you look online, you will find videos of children that are star kids now that literally can look at a flower and open that flower and close that flower. So the abilities that the star kids have now, connected to them fully coming here and not partially washed by coming here, is astronomical, really. And there's a whole other show I could do on organizations that I don't really feel like are doing the right thing, that are videotaping and creating files, and I think trying to give parents hope, but at the same time making their kids a target of governments and potential kidnapping, and them being used for not good ends. So, but that's a whole other show. So anyway, I started raising bugs from the dead, and so early on I started working. Insects were my first clients. Let's just put it that way. Some bugs didn't like to resurrect, like grasshoppers, and it took me a while to figure that out as an adult, because they only go one direction, which is forward. So, like regenerating, and, you know, from death would be kind of a backwards thing for them. So they like to take their energies and do something else with them once they've passed on from this world. Instead of a spirit, it's more of an energy. You take your energies, you're involved in energies here. Everything is energy. Um, so now I would kind of like to talk about what is going on now. Oh, with that huge activation is what I'm going to call it at age 4, where all of 3 things kind of came together into one being. The body almost didn't survive it coming here. Also, I'd like to point out I've had 6 major head injuries. And a lot of the homeopathic doctors I've worked with are always surprised I can talk and I can walk. I've also had a major brain tumor that took me 8 years to heal. I did it completely alternatively. I fully believe that that there really isn't death, and there really isn't terminal illness, right? It's not terminal. All illness is reversible, even down to the last moments. It's completely, it totally could reverse it and regenerate and your system at any point in time. Just depends on if you have the strength and energy to continue on. Sometimes your energy field is so drained that the only thing that you really can do is die. But there are people out there like me who specialize in plumping up those energy fields to help people get through disease and onto the other side. Sometimes you need somebody else to power up your energy fields to generate power for you, and then place this power and energy into your energy field in order to give you strength to keep you moving, and also to keep your systems running. Your systems require lots of energy. So the next thing I would really like to talk about is going back to working with Indigenous people. What it's led to me since my early 20s is working with First Nation people, original people, Aboriginal people, however you want to talk about that. They have prophecies about people like me, and in general, I just do better around those people. They have a bigger understanding of what is really going on galactically, what's really going on this planet. They have been trained for thousands and thousands and thousands of years by ETs and other star beings that have come here. The Hopi have stories about the ETs or the extraterrestrials from different races, and some of them look human, that drop their children off with the Hopi Nation to teach the Hopi stuff, and the Hopis to teach them ceremony and work with energies and living forms, and to teach them, earth medicine. And then eventually their families would come back and get them at different points in their development. So, I'm not unusual. I mean, to most people in the mainstream, I'm going to be really unusual. Why am I choosing to come out now? Because I really feel like people are being led in a completely wrong direction. And I just would like to help. And I think the other big issue, in all honesty, is that I've always played the smaller role. I've allowed people to flip out on me and read me my personal inventory, and I think in some ways it's because I've played a weaker position, and I haven't really always played the game the way that the people would like me to play the game. And so I've taken a lot of hostility and anger and abuse. And, the thing is, I haven't really minded, because I understand that even if I was to confront them, retaliate, or reply to them, it would just escalate their situation, because whatever their story is that's playing out is the story that's playing. And until that story plays out, they're not really able to hear another story. So they're not really in a conscious place, though they may think they're conscious, to accept, real truth about their situation and about me. So I always try to take the understanding, way out. And let's just say that, maybe I'm just finally coming in and kind of owning my power. I always tell people to own their power. So I guess at some point I've got to own my power. Another reason is I really want to help what's going on this planet. And I really want to help my teachers and other people that I work with to actually start the restoration process, start flipping the switches back on in the earth so that the earth can actually turn back on and help us, and help not fight, but shift the energy in a way where a lot of the negative falls off. In my experience, dealing with energies, the first time I ever came in contact with the dark energies that run this planet, they are behind everything, and most people don't see them. Some people experience them like in hauntings and stuff like that. I get calls every week now from people where the demonic energy is so thick and so strong that it no longer needs to even invade the body and take it over, but it can actually directly impact the physical health. And it also, in one case recently, a guy called me, a gang of demonic spirits broke his leg, broke it so badly that he pretty much bled to death. He ended up having like 3 transfusions. And I've asked him, when he gets stronger and heal, if he would like to please be a guest on my show, because these are people that live, they start to isolate themselves from everyone because other people can't really understand their experience. Because we also have this new age movement that is bullshit. It's a lie. It's a propaganda that you've been served. So I get really kind of excited about this topic. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's the complete and total truth. The demonic energies, okay, so these spirits are named many different things. And no, there is no great devil, there's no great Satan. There's not a person. There's not like one being that all these beings can be pinned to. That's a figment and illusion. But these beings are in what a lot of exorcists that I've known, and not just Catholic exorcists. There's many different kinds of Christian offshoots that they specialize in training of exorcisms. Lots of shamanic people like myself, we do a lot of exorcism type work. I do not fight them once they're in your body. That's not my work. I really try to help people and train people and teach them how to deal with them in a non-fighting way. Once you start fighting, they win. They like that kind of energy. And like, martial arts, they take that energy you're pushing at them and they turn it around, and then they have more force to push you and hurt you. So it's really important not to fight them. I like to shift energies. I like to create new energy grids. I like to do ceremony on land and areas to release these kinds of energies, or to buffer them out with enough light that they're pushed to the outside of it. I like to go into houses on property and land, and I like to shift these grids and create energy fields that work in better accord with nature and the nature spirits that are there. Kind of helps to amplify them so that they have a little bit more strength. And we have to realize, like, every time there is an act of violence that is bloody, punching someone in the face and blood, especially if any of that blood drips onto the ground, that is a blood letting. That is a blood sacrifice. And because of the energy that has been done to it, then the releasing of that blood makes it a blood sacrifice. It makes the dark forces stronger. If you look back in history, that's all that's been going on this planet. And nowadays, like you think about, You think about those bombs that they're trying to make sure that nobody's using. But, you know, the United States seems to keep using them even though they've asked them not to use them, these dirty bombs. Well, these dirty bombs are blood sacrifice bombs because, you know, it just doesn't kill you with gas, right? You know, if you die from gas poisoning or whatever, probably a little bit of blood may come out, but not a whole lot. But, you know, if you have a dirty bomb explode and has nails and shrapnel and God knows bricks and concrete, whatever the hell's in them, it just tears the human body apart. And all the blood in a very aggressive, extremely violent way releases onto the soil. So you look in the history of blood sacrifices in the past and you start to ask yourself, we are doing the same thing, but now we're doing blood sacrifice on a mass scale. So anywhere that there has been bloodied violence of any kind, it doesn't even matter what the reason was or the justification, is an energy field that the demonic forces, the dark forces, are now in control of. So violence is not a good thing, right? I'm not saying don't stand your ground, but it should never lead to any kind of bloodshed. So I'm just trying to think here about, so let's talk about what some of these beings are called. And I'm just kind of talking about, and I hate to use the word specialty because who wants to be a specialist in dark energies or dark forces? But the bottom line is that I'm the person that people call. I'm the person that people get referred to. Just like there's probably other people like me, exorcists, other people that deal with dark energies. So in the Catholic and Christian societies, they would be called demonic energies. In South American shamanism and other types of shamanism, they're called flyers. Carlo Castaneda, with his work, actually was one of the people that in the English terms called them flyers. And some people call them shadow people. Also in the Quran, they're called the jinn. So everyone that works with these kinds of energies will tell you that they come in gangs. So there's always the head gang leader, you know, no different than, say, the drug cartel. You got this guy, he, you know, he's the Mr. Cocaine guy, and he's driving like, you know, the hooped up Benz, and he's got his armed posse, you know, and then the lower people, they distribute all the drugs to them, and they're like the slaves, and they go out and sell the drugs and make people sick and sell the children and sell it to whoever else, blah, 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 down the line. So that's kind of like what these gangs look like. So it's very hard to get to the top of that gang. And usually they're always trying to work you up into a contract. They're always trying to work you up into contracts, and which leads us to some other kinds of thoughts about them. They're in control of our planet. I had a friend of mine, when I was 4 years old is when they first started talking to me, or, you know, at 5, after I went through this transformational process. Every house I've ever lived in, every neighborhood I've ever lived in, I've seen them, I've heard them, I've been witness to them my entire life. When I was a little girl, I remember an apartment that we lived in, and I had a safety, you know, my own little veiled corner in the closet that I would have to go into, that because there would be so much crazy dark energy, you know, I'd be laying in my bed in the middle of the night and I can hear these things winding up in the closet, and they would just throw things at me full speed and hit me in the back. I mean, I don't think that particular place we lived for a year, I didn't sleep. You know, then I show up in school, I'm falling asleep on my desk. because I'm exhausted. And, you know, I'm sure that there are a lot of kids out there. Look at the movie Sixth Sense. That was a totally star kid movie, because the adult that freaks out and loses his mind and kills Bruce Willis as the psychiatrist in the movie was a star kid, and no one ever listened to him, never listened to what was going on in his life, what he saw. And the psychiatric people, psychology people, are not listening. And they make people like me out to be complete and total nutcases. Now, there are also people who have brain chemistry problems. A Native American friend of mine who was an astrologer in Canada, who was a forensic psychiatrist for 50 years at the maximum security prison in Canada. And we used to have a lot of conversations about this. And he said that those people who were schizophrenic, who committed crimes, had their eggs scrambled from the day they came in. So there's a huge difference and between star kids and people seeing beings and them talking to them and, you know, seeing dark forces and all this other stuff. But there's also a mental instability part too. And having been in private practice for over 25 years, I had to learn early on to be really, really careful, because a lot of people who really needed other help than what I could give them, because their karmic path, if you want to call it that, they had to come into this world with their eggs scrambled, and no one was allowed to unscramble those eggs. They were not able to be healed. It was part of their journey for whatever reason. And it doesn't even really, it's not even really any of my business. It's not any of your business why their eggs were scrambled. But it's their journey. And sometimes they need a little bit of help to stay balanced and stay together. So in practices, a lot of healers and people like that think that they can heal these people. And then we end up becoming charlatans, because a lot of healers aren't really experienced, have any background in psychology that they could actually notice the difference, and don't really have a background in things that are going on behind the scenes. So our planet's not ascending. Some serious ways to get involved. I'm just going to look at my notes here because I had a couple of things. Oh, I also want to talk to people. I would be considered a galactic doctor or healer. There are star kids that are galactic historians or adults. We're adults now. I'm an adult. That are historians, galactic historians. We also have galactic technical people, technology people like Tesla, and his legacy of work, and many other brilliant people. I feel we're gifted, excuse me, my nose, it's just gifted star people on this planet. So we kind of really need to wake up and not poo-poo or be afraid of things that people are talking about. And maybe see if we can even wrap our head around it so that we can make this world a better place. So there was a couple things that I had written down. Oh yes, I really want to talk about 3 serious points about demonic energies that I really think are super, super, super important. Right now, we have in the last 5 years, these forces have increased by 600%. There are a lot of people who have done exorcisms and this kind of work who are so beaten up after years and years of doing it that they are retiring. And there are a lot that haven't passed down how to do some of this kind of training, like traditional shamanism kind of training. So, So, okay, so there's going to be like 4 things here that I want to talk about that are really important with dealing with these kinds of beings. When I was 23 years old, I studied with a Lakota medicine woman who trained me to work in 64 dimensional layers. Taught me to do a lot of the healing, the seated sessions, a lot of the components of that I do now. And we consistently, I apprenticed with her for like a year. And the only reason that she taught me the things that she taught me was because 2 things. One, she had been kidnapped by NASA and had to eventually escape them. She was healing their scientists and stuff of radiation and lots of other things, and got to a point that she could hear people's thoughts, and she literally had to escape. So whenever she talked to us that she was coming into the area to do work, she always talked to us telepathically. And what's more astonishing is people would start calling locations that she would come in and set up to do a lot of this work. So I worked with her for like about a year. And I had several attempted kidnappings by NASA. One was by a psychologist that I went to shortly after I stopped seeing him, and he approached me about going, having some people look at me from NASA, people that he knew. I refused and kind of went more into hiding. And not shortly after that, he was murdered. It's still listed as suicide on his documentation, but he hung himself and slit his wrists. And the building where I went and saw him for therapy for a year, when I was going through a really traumatic shift, burned down to the ground 100%, and a new building was built like not even shortly after he committed suicide. He was murdered. So she saw that. She'd been there. She looked at some of my codes of where I come from, and I came from the same areas that she came, which are from the Cirrus or whatever, however people want to call it. I come from there. She came from there. A lot of people who have great ability, star people, we come from there. So she was willing to take me on and apprentice me so that I would go on and do her work and a lot of other people's work in a much more magnificent way, I guess. The number one thing that we worked on, so this is 23 years ago, was people who channeled beings. And not too long after working with her, started to realize that they were demonic. They had agendas. So, you have all these people channeling all this information. Oh, you ever notice they tell you the same crap every day and you believe it? Oh, we're going through this shift, and oh, it's going to be really great, and oh yeah, everything's transforming and it's all light and rainbows. Okay, well, that's been going on for like 20 years. And you know what? No light and rainbows has showed up. I mean, if there's any indication, the whole world is on the edge, the brink of war. People are being murdered left and right. There were like 29 alternative doctors and nurses recently at an alternative medical convention in Germany 2 days ago that were poisoned to death. 29 people at one location were poisoned to death. Okay, that's not rainbows, people. You got to quit listening to this channeled stuff, because you know what? It's another Jesus Christ story trying to save you. There's nothing that's going to be able to save you. You have to smarten up. You have to educate yourself. You have to pull your own bootstraps on and pull on your big adult panties and figure out what the hell is really going out there. And these, not that I'm totally against people who channel. I was totally interested. One of my favorite people growing up was Seth, the Seth books. Jane Rupert. No, that was what he called her, was Rupert. Jane. Anyway, so I love those kinds of books. I really dug them. I have gone to people who've channeled, but the main thing is if these beings wanted to talk to you, they would just show up in your room and tell you something. If they were working for the greater good, they could just take over a TV network, people, and give you a whole, hi, I'm from, the Palladian Nation, and I have taken over your 6 o'clock news because I have a special report for you. They don't need people. They don't need people to give you any kind of information. If they're working in the highest and greatest good, they will come to you in their full being of who they are. If they have to hide, if they have to filter themselves through another person, I'm just going to say it's not a good thing. And it's not a good thing for that person because you know what? They're never going to shake those things. They're going to basically have to have some kind of exorcism in order to release those things from their body. The first one that I ever helped my teacher release when I was 23, the Lakota medicine woman. I was so unbelievably shocked. This guy came to us and he was channeling this being shaman or something like that, shaman or something like that. And the guy finally started to realize, there were some problems with this being because they had gained more and more power over him. Though he really felt like the information he was getting from this being was really grand and powerful, and people really loved it. But you know what? Changing your reality is not as easy as people say it is. And I'm sure that lots of you can't even wrap your head around it. Sometimes it's mostly just luck. So it takes 3 hours. We release this being out of the sky. My teacher gets really, really sick. I hear she's sick. So that night, this is 2 weeks later, I go over to the lady who was also in the room. She was the grounder. She was so sick she couldn't get off the couch for 2 weeks. Really, just unbelievably sick. So I went around their house and I put in a salt ring and some protection and a whole bunch of other things. And I generated light source and I put it into their house and created a whole energy field to push this thing out. Immediately, that night, she called me and said, holy crap, what the hell is it? I said, it's that thing we removed out of that guy's body. So here I am young. I'm 23 years old. I'm going and saving these people I'm working with. So I went to my teacher that night. I went into a deep trance and I went to see what was going on with her because we hadn't heard from her for 2 weeks. And I'm literally energetically, she's laying on the bed. I can tell she's really sick in her physical body. I'm literally leaning over her, looking at her. And then right behind me, I feel it and I turn around and it's like a 10-foot size, shape of a man, but with black reptile skin, real shiny skin. He had this buckle that had a red V on it. He had the head, but it was all snake skin and red eyes and snake lips. And I remember trying to run and almost running into him. And this was the being that was removed out of this person. So I basically had to do kind of some hand-to-hand combat. And then I ended up having to leave there right away and get out of there. But I put a shield up around my teacher, the Lakota woman, because I didn't know what else to do. And I hadn't ever dealt with something like this before in an energetic field. So maybe not so good information. And for all the kind of Christian-y people out there that kind of, still have their foot in the Bible or new agey, that, anything that comes along that gives us information that's going to save us, that something's going to happen, that we don't have to do anything about. We don't even have to participate in it. We don't have to have any personal responsibility is a problem. Life on Earth requires personal responsibility. You have to feed yourself. You have to bathe yourself. You have to put a shelter over your head. You have to take care of your children. That's personal responsibility. So to spiritually just the planet's going to ascend and everything's going to be fine is probably not the truth. More what the truth is that my Indian teachers tell me is the harvest, which people understand as the rapture, but it's a harvest where they harvest humans off this planet and they take them other places and literally use them as batteries, like in the Matrix it talks about. But they'll harvest millions of people. Like 900,000 people go missing a year on this planet because beings remove them, eat them, use them as slaves, whatever else is going to go on. So you see a rapture, run for your life. I'm telling you, run for your life. Because it ain't God coming back and it ain't Jesus coming back. So during my Pentecostal years, after doing lots and lots of study of the Bible, trying to figure out how I could piece it together and make it work in my life, which just hasn't ever really totally been possible. I kind of look at the Bible as a fraud. I mean, not the Old Testament part, but there's some other parts that are pretty fraudulent. But one of the things that always stood out to me that priests will never talk about, they'll never talk to you about this because they have to sell you salvation. You have to be sold. They have to make money, right? That's how they make money. I think it's like Philippians 12:12 or something like that. But it says something like, and it's supposed to be the exact words of Jesus. So in a lot of those Bibles, it's like the red section, and it's Jesus' words, right? It says, continue to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It means that you have to pull your shit together, stop looking around for someone to give you information and save you, and get your act together, right? And it ain't going to be easy. It's going to scare the whoo-hoo out of you. You're probably going to have some nervous breakdowns. You're probably going to crack. You're probably going to go into a depression for a while. You're probably going to have to go through a lot of big mental and emotional things that no one has ever prepared you for in order to possibly get over to the other side, where you are a full, powered being doing your personal responsibility work. Okay, so channelers, don't always believe them, okay? Also, another story, I was working with some people. The woman was a ray of light. She was never a body. She was never energy, spirit, a soul. She took over a body here because the woman that had the body just really didn't want to be here anymore and was attempting suicide. So they made a trade. The woman got to be relieved of her body, and the ray of life came in here to help do the work. And then the woman called herself Tashira Ray. And one of the things that she said to me one time was that this planet is effed up, that it does not work the way that everyone off planet believes, whether you're an interdimensional being, a ray of light, an extraterrestrial. The hard drive of this planet is completely, totally effed up. She said, we're taught that, or we believe that we can come to this planet, imagine a wad of money in our pocket, reach in and pull out the wad of money in our pocket. She said, but it almost works in reverse. You start trying to manifest and conjure that stuff, and you start to notice your bank account start getting lower and lower. It's like a reverse spell. So everything is in reverse. My Native American teachers tell me that too. So be careful. People are channeling light and everything's going to be great and fun and fantastic. The reverse is, maybe demonic control. Yeah, so anyway, number 2, pharmaceutical meds. I was going out and doing lectures at Seventh-day Adventist churches for a while, really talking to people with like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, a lot of these different things. They give them all the same meds. Most of the meds that they're on, medications, are epilepsy drugs. Okay, they don't have epilepsy. But the epilepsy drugs actually have opium in them. So, if you see something moving over there, yeah, it's my princess. So she usually doesn't like to show herself on my shows, so she just popped up because she heard something. But sometimes she does, come in and want to say hi. But she likes to hide while I'm doing TV. She's like, "Oh, I'm not here. Don't show me." Okay, so you're not seeing things if you see something moving right over here. Okay, so most pharmaceutical drugs that are given to people for pain and all kinds of weird things are opiates, man-made opiates and natural opiates. One of the worst possession drugs there is are most of the epilepsy drugs that are on the market. You should really look at your drugs and make sure that you are not a vessel, an easy vessel for demonic possession. And Big Pharma in the United States loves giving these people. I think that there is a conspiracy. I think that these people don't know what they're dishing out, that they're forced to dish them out, but they're creating millions of people who are open vessels for instant demonic possession, for all of these beings that are coming up through these cracks and portholes that need bodies. I know this sounds far-fetched, but it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings, the orgs. Yeah, those things. So we're, getting ready for probably the biggest fight we've ever had on this planet for the long-term energy of this planet. And, it could end up looking like Mars because, you know what? They've done this before. They've done this to other planets, even in our galaxy, right? So they have a history of moving into planets and doing this kind of thing, killing everything living, right? Slowly, painfully, using us, right? So any kind of opiates or like epilepsy drugs and a lot of these other pain drugs block the neurotransmitters in the brain. And what that does is the brain stops communicating to the body. It also, on a physical level, stops regenerating the body. So now your liver doesn't get regenerated every 6 months now. Your lungs don't get regenerated every 6 months now because the neuron blockers now block your hard drive from communicating to the vessel, right? So the brain stops communicating to the body. And when that happens, the brain can't go, "Oh, 911, 911. You have entity and demon in body. Let's remove." And exorcists and most people can't remove these things out of the body because there isn't a mind. The you is blocked from your vehicle. So if you do get possessed or you think that you may be possessed, you got to get off those neuron blockers as soon as possible. Whoops. Oh, my light. Sorry, I lost the light. I lost the light. No. So, okay. Another thing, like, there's no way that I can get to all of the stuff that I know and all the information. And this is the first time that I'm actually really coming out and really talking about a lot of the things that I deal with and work with. The other things that are big issues are dreaming drugs. In shamanism, we call them dreaming world drugs. They can be like DMT, ayahuasca, peyote. Okay. I think people should do these dreaming drugs to help open up consciousness, to see other worlds and beings that are really here. Good ones that help us and bad ones that we can learn to see and avoid. However, there are street peyote, there is street ayahuasca, there is street DMT. These are things not to be messed with unless you have a traditional shaman. A road man is what they call it in Native American First Nation They call him the road man. And he goes through training, brings this medicine to the people, and takes them through their journey. Now, these shamans, roadman people, travel with people. They protect you. They make sure that you don't get kidnapped on your journey. They make sure that you go out there and have a fairly good experience, and that you don't bring anything back with you that could terrorize you and frighten you and scare you to complete death. So, if you want to participate in dreaming drugs, you need to spend the money, go down to South America, or go to the indigenous nations and your communities and see if they will allow you to participate in the peyote ceremonies. And the person who would be giving this medicine, who has been trained to give this medicine, is the roadman. Shamans and the roadman. If you take this stuff, I can't even tell you how many phone calls I'm getting now a month of people who have taken these drugs, had no idea what the heck was going to happen, didn't have someone traveling with them to the other worlds, and brought back some really horrible, scary things that they will never be able to shake off ever again. So what I do is now I have to train them in shamanic practices so that they can at least have a buffer between them and these beings. Because these beings will basically take over your life. They will frighten you, they scare you, they physically harm you. So make sure if you want to go down that road that you do it the right way. Please do it the right way. Otherwise, the rest of your life on this planet is going to be really harsh, really upsetting, and really probably pretty frightening. Okay, so let's see. All right, the last thing about the whole demonic energy that I really like to share. In 2009, the state that I live in, the state of Nevada, yes, Nevada, decided that it was going to enforce a bill that hadn't even passed, hadn't even had its opening statements in the legislature. Okay, so my whole life up until that point, I was like, stay away from the cops, stay away from the government. You know, my family line just said, you know, we try to make ourselves as small as possible so that we're not seen with our work, because we're a target. We're a target for everyone and everything. So I, you know, had been in private practice, you know, for quite a while, off and on. I had left. I had went and studied some new things, and I had come back to Nevada. And I was setting up, working on people, doing reboots, which brings people into whole brain function, which can arrest disease and all kinds of really amazing things. Really cheap, fast, and effective. Something that everyone hates in the medical field. Cheap, fast, and effective. And they started sending out boards. And unless you're licensed by the board, they have, and they don't have a contract with you that you signed, that they're liable and responsible for you to make sure that you're this and that and the other thing. So if you're not licensed, they don't legally have jurisdiction over you. Now, mind you, before this, I was licensed for 15 years. But then, you know, after I left and I started studying other things, I just really was like, you know, I'm just not going to be licensed. I'm not doing anything to harm anybody. I do no harm. I'm not harming anybody. Never had a complaint against me. Nothing, you know. And I do work that nobody else does. You know, I do have Western medical training. You know, I have done internships at the hospital for different things. I've done wilderness medicine, you know, where you have to like sew people up because their femur's fractured and, you know, set that thing out in the wilderness. So I'm not a total dummy, you know, like I'm not a total like douchebag. And I'm not one of those healers that just, you know, that's it, right? That's all they do. So I was given a fake cease and desist. Actually, the woman who I was in contract with for renting office space to see my patients and clients and participants got the cease and desist for me. Well, it was an illegal cease and desist. It didn't even have a judge's signature on it. Then I learned they don't really have any jurisdiction over me, but my landlady kicked me out in 24 hours anyway because they threatened her. Well, since that time, 2009, January 2009, I've undergone 4 huge attacks by the state, boards, the state and the boards in this state. And always the same thing. The last one, they threatened in March of 2013. I was working out of a friend of mine's place on Tuesdays, seeing people. I did walk-ins only. And you know what? This is the other scary part. It was pretty much for free because the people in that area, they could not afford to pay anyone for any kind of anything. So I'd say like 95% of the people that walked in there and I saw were free. You know, I was gifting them. And weekly. It wasn't like a lot of them didn't just come in once. They came in every week and they were getting better. So what happened was that I ended up working with some people. We were 8 citizen lobbyists against 809 paid lobbyists in the state that year. I worked over 100 hours a week as a citizen lobbyist. I learned about law. I learned how to read bills. I went in and I listened to bills. I testified on 50 bills, constantly on these 50 bills. And the one bill that in particular that was coming at us as alternative practitioners in the state of Nevada, which we're supposed to be the alternative medicine state, by the way, was a bill called SB 69, Complementary Medicine Act, which basically would make someone like me working in the state of Nevada a felony, which means I can't have a passport. I can't have a gun. I like guns. And I can't leave my country if I get arrested. And guess what? It would give the right to law enforcement to come and arrest you. Okay, there's no due process in that. So, and it would have shut down 1,500 supplement stores across the United States. And vitamin C, across the state of Nevada. And it would have made vitamin C a felony. Yeah. Can you even imagine going to jail because you got a bottle of vitamin C in the mail? At your house? How dare you? So anyway, I ended up becoming a lobbyist and I went out and I kicked ass and I kicked that bill out. It didn't even leave the committee from once it started. However, over 6 months of being at the legislature, day in, day out, listening, testifying, early on I saw flyers. I saw demonic entities and I would watch them fly into a person's body. They would look up from their computer, a legislature, assembly, or senator, and they would become totally animated, screaming and yelling and fighting and whatever else with people testifying or whatever else. And this went on for 6 months. And I started to realize that jobs that require an oath are signing a contract to allow demonic possession. So, you are a vessel for demonic possession anytime you take an oath. Okay, well, what kind of jobs have oaths? Cops, sheriffs, doctors, judges, attorneys, any kind of oath jobs. So it started becoming apparent to me, well, these people control us, right? They kind of control our system. They tell us what to do. They tell us how to do it. So of course, these oath jobs would be jobs where people could be demonically possessed, even temporary for a moment, or whatever else, so that the agenda is carried out. So, we have to really consider something else besides making people take some kind of damn oath so that they still have free will. They still have their own mind so that they can carry out the job for the greatest and highest and greatest good, not for the demonic, and flyer population to control our world more. So we have to get rid of them. We have to change the energy on the planet because they're operating in the background. So until we get a grip on what's going on with that, nothing else we ever do, the whole monetary system could fall apart. We could get a whole new money system, okay? But it's not going to change the outcome. It's not going to change the outcome of what's going on here. It's not going to change the outcome at all. We have to deal with that. So a friend of mine sent me a photo about 3 months ago. I've been trying to talk to him about this stuff, and he wasn't really listening, and now he's really listening because he's starting to notice what I've been saying is happening. So he sends me this photo, and it's of a friend of mine calls them the Shrubs, the Bush family. She calls them the Shrubs. And it shows Shrub Jr. giving a lecture, except for a person snapped 3 still photos during this 20-minute lecture, right, that he was giving. Now, the human part of him has blue eyes. We know that. The reptile part of him, because he's half reptilian, we still don't know if they came from other planets or if they've been living here for a long time. I think they came from other places, to be honest. A lot of the people that are in our high functioning politicians, they're hybrids. They're half and half. So it shows a first picture of him all like, hi, still, boom. And it shows his blue eyes. Then a few minutes later, the guy stops the video and shows a still frame. Shows him with the golden brownish lizard eyes with the crease in them in the center, the long slit, the pupil slit. And then a few minutes later, snaps it again, and his eyes are all black. And it kind of helped me to put a lot of this stuff together. We would like to say that it's the reptiles, the reptile beings, the hybrids that are really running the show. But that showed me that no, even the demonic beings, the interdimensional beings, are controlling them. They took an oath of office. So they're already dark and sinister. And then add in a little demonic possession, right? And see how dangerous the whole mixture becomes. So even they even have demonic possession on top of all of it. So we're dealing with a huge, another layer that no one wants to talk about, nobody wants to deal with, that it isn't going to change, it isn't going to go away. Jesus is not going to arrive, and change it all. It's not what's really going to happen. But what is going to happen is maybe, the spaceships will come and they're going to start harvesting people off our planet. Just literally, people are going to think it's the rapture, but no, they're going to take them away to another planet and utilize their energy fields and suck them dry until there's nothing left. And they do this, and eventually you don't even have a spirit left. There's no energy left. What are the answers? I'm not completely sure. It's taken me a lifetime to put some really important pieces together in this puzzle and trying to figure out what's going on this planet. And what is the long-term solution? I think that the long-term solution is held within the Native Americans, the Native Canadians, First Nation, original people, Native population, Aboriginal, Dogons, and because they were taught a long time ago by the good star people ceremony. And the reason why we do a ceremony, one of the people I follow, Superman, gosh, if you guys ever get to watch his video, he will just blow you away. He's so unbelievably talented. He comes from the Crow Agency Reservation in Montana. He's so good. And one of the things that he has is a statement. It says, dancing is prayer, and to pray is to heal. And so their dancing is a ceremony. They turn themselves into an energy vortex, and they align with different spirits on this planet. The pipe carrying ceremony. The white buffalo calf woman was a star being who came here and literally gave a pipe bundle, taught the pipe ceremony to a family here on this planet. They still have that pipe. And so traditional pipe carriers that have been given the pipe in a ceremonial way are doing a ceremony that changes and shifts the energy on this planet wherever that ceremony is done. When you do a fire ceremony, when you do an earth healing ceremony, when you put in a medicine well, you put in a sweat lodge, and you do it with intent, there is a thing that happens where the energetic charge enlivens the earth. It clears energies. So think about like all these murders and cutting down all these forests and these trees. At some point, somebody has to go back there. They have to do the ceremonial work. They have to heal the torture, the damage, the murder, the violence. And in some places, there's just murder upon murder upon murder. It's tainting the vibrations of our water. No higher vibrational water, no life on earth. So they know what to do, but there's more of us destroying than there is them doing the work. Unlike my friend Bavado, he has I think it's Earth Wisdom Foundation, and he travels around, Shoshone Medicine Man, and he releases the patterns that are hold of this detriment on the earth. And he was taught by the Star Nation to go and heal and start reconnecting these sacred sites back up to the Grand Tetons, where his sacred area is, the Shoshone people. And that it should look like a star of life pattern starting to emerge. And when all those meridians, all those lines are hooked back up, then the earth will have power, but you have to release the garbage first. You have to release what the underlying issues are of the illness and the disease. And it's the massacres, it's the pain, it's the suffering, it's the tearing down of forests. So I'd like to leave you with one story. Not only I, but in 2003, the tree being started talking to me. One morphed into my house, scared the shit out of me, tried to talk to me. And after that, after it scared me, it started to come to me in dreams. And it was a kind of a pine tree guy, conifer, two guys. They had, they used their little things as hands. And they were teaching me about making tree juice. Well, it turns out that pine needles have huge amounts of vitamin C, antifungal, all kinds of medicinal properties. Like, it's serious medicine. Anyway, at one point I was kind of like, in my dream, I was kind of like, veering off, wasn't holding my consciousness, and the tree poked me in my chest and started screaming at me and said to me, "You stupid humans, you think you know everything, but you know nothing. We came to this world to help you, to teach you, to be here, to participate together in an experience. The trees came from the tree world. The water came from the water world. The weeds came from the weed worlds. The grasses came from the grass world. The fish, ocean beings came from their worlds. All the animals came from their worlds. as a group consciousness to be here on this planet and share this experience, except for you humans. Just don't think that we're important or valued. And we're leaving this planet. We're talking to the councils to leave this planet, which means if we all leave, you'll have nothing to eat. You will have no medicine and it will be barren. And so then my medicine friend Marshall told me a story that was similar to that, and two other stories that were similar to that. And this young girl, Indian girl, she was going through her woman ceremony. She had lived on her reservation. She'd never been to the ocean. She'd never seen any beings that live in the ocean, no ocean animals. During her vision quest, it was like the ocean was around her, and the turtles and the octopuses, and they were all swimming around her. And the turtle swam up to her and started talking to her that she needs to go back to her people and that they need to start telling everyone on Earth that the ocean people, the ocean beings are done. That they are tired of the ocean being poisoned. They are tired of us not listening and not respecting them, and that they've gone to the council to leave. And that they could leave at any time and there will never be anything left in this ocean if they do not listen and they do not act now. And there was two other Indian experiences during Vision Quest that happened, one with plants and something else. And so I started to realize, like, these beings are trying to talk to us and trying to help us. And we're so self-important in our egos. We call things extinctions. You know, maybe we haven't done anything. Maybe we haven't made anything go extinct. Maybe it's left because it hates us. So now it's like people will say, oh yeah, well there's this, Fukushima, and now all the fish and the whales and everything in the ocean's dying. You know what? It was prophesized 4 years ago that they were going to leave this world. Whether Fukushima happened or didn't happen. We need to get over our egos that we are causing things. No. We're out of alignment. We are out of balance with everything. And everything is going to leave us. It's not even going to fight with us anymore. It's just going to leave and we're going to have nothing. So something to consider. So it's important to do ceremony. And I'm not talking like witchcraft. Don't do any bloodshedding, for God's sakes. Don't pretend to drink blood. Oh, hey, while we're on the subject, just one more thing about demonic possession. The church, communion, you're drinking blood and you're eating someone's body. That's vampirism and cannibalism, and it's satanic worship, that they're using your energy to conjure other things regardless if you realize it. So I've had this debate with people. Is it worse to actually use blood in a ceremony or to transfix wine into a certain being's blood? And we're in agreement that the transfixing, the transmuting, the actual conjuring black magic spell of turning wine or grape juice into blood is much worse. So something to think about. And if you've done this in your past, may it be a good time to do some ceremony and some light work in order to kind of release you from the spell of your captors, because whoever you drank blood with holds your energy and holds your power and is still using it to this day. Okay, so in all my TV shows, I'm running over, I'm already 3 minutes. I always like to leave people with a private practice. I really want to thank you for listening to what I've had to say. It was a lot easier than it was going to be. There's a lot more information I would really like to give, but in the future, I'm going to be having guests. I'm also going to be doing my urban farm builds, and, you know, maybe some ceremonial work. We'll be able to bring some video footage forth. And I think that ceremony is the only way that we're going to be able to turn the Mother Earth on, and we're going to be able to heal all these sites and bring her back into full power. And not that we're going to ascend, but then we're going to have to learn how to live sustainably. And we're going to have to live in alignment and balance with everything else on this planet, including the things that you don't think really are important, like a weed that you spray poison on that causes cancer. It's kind of really disrespectful, really. Those plants usually have high medicine. A lot of them have more nutrient than any food that you can buy in the store. Seriously. And you disrespect it. It's trying to grow in your yard so it can help you heal whatever you need to heal. And you're spraying it with poison. I mean, we got to really rethink what our behavior is towards other living things. And we want to be treated with love and respect. And we're like poisoning this weed. This weed came to our yard, came to where we live to help heal us, knew that we needed it. And we spray it with fucking poison and kill it. Oops, excuse me. I dropped an F-bomb. Rated X, rated X. Okay. I apologize for the F-bomb. Oops. I'm losing my light. All right. So I hope in the other shows I'll have the light fixed so that you can see me well. I want to leave you with a ceremony, a really short ceremony. I love when I have guests, I always ask them to do a private, a simple practice for people that they can practice for the week. Okay. So this is Consciousness of Economics. I have a new channel now. I'm on the Project Camelot TV network. I go live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. These shows will be archived. Please share them far and wide. And remember, like, everything's about information and energy. So don't judge it. Don't attach onto it as bad or, oh yeah, this is good, but that's bad. You know, release yourself from that and listen to it as information. And you know what? It may plant a seed in you later, right? May not be for you now, may not be for you ever, but it may be able to plant a seed in you, or maybe the information that you get from educating yourself will be able to help someone else down the road, right? You'll be able to give them information, right? Even if it's not the right and perfect thing for you. So before I teach this, I'm Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I will be the host of Conscious of Economics on the Project Camelot TV network every Thursday at 4 p.m. with guests, sometimes farm builds, and sometimes I'll be solo. Sometimes my fire medicine woman dog will show herself, but today she's kind of hiding. Yeah, she doesn't want to get involved in my conversation. And like I said, take the information for what it's worth. We all have to start doing ceremony. We have to start focusing on the things that are important. And we really need to get out of the spell that someone is coming to save us or something that's going to happen, because it's not. Okay, with that, I am going to teach you the 7-directional prayer. For 25 years, my teachers of all different tribes and walks always told me to do the prayer. And early on in my life, I thought, well, what the hell? I mean, it's like a total waste of time. So periodically, I'd re-engage with it down the road. And then about 5 years ago, I think maybe, it just kind of all came together. And I realized why that we do this prayer, why First Nation people do this prayer, why we have 7 directions, right? So, first of all, I'm going to do the prayer, and then we'll talk about, as we're going, what happens with this prayer. Super simple, super easy to do. And I'm going to show you my style of how I do it. Everybody is trained differently. I've been lucky enough to have teachers that want me to have my own not style, not, like be the rebel, but to be conscious and have intention with what I do. And so I have to make it my own, right? So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. We're just going to set, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of sample here of what I would do, how I would do it. I call to the east, I call to the east, I call to the east. I welcome and invite the east into my experience, into the now, into this experience in the now. And I also let my heart connect to the east. I'm calling to the east to connect. And then once it connects, I feel it connect to me, my heart. Then I welcome it and invite it into my experience. And I'm welcoming and inviting it into my experience so that it will bring its wisdom and its knowledge, its information, its energy, to bring something into my experience that I'm having that I may need that information for, right? Okay. I call to the south, I call to the south, I call to the south. I welcome and invite the south into my experience, into the experience that I'm having now. I call to the west, I call to the west, I call to the west. I welcome and invite the west into my experience that I'm having now. I call to the north, I call to the north, I call to the north. I welcome and invite the north into my experience now, to the experience I'm having now. I call to the earth, I call to the earth, I call to the earth. I welcome and invite the earth into my experience now, into the experience I'm having now. I call to the star nations, I call to the star nations, I call to my ancestors, I call to my families. And I welcome and invite you now, into my experience now. I call to the Creator, I call to the Creator, I call to the Creator. I welcome and invite the Creator into my experience, into this experience we're having together now. I call myself, I call myself, I call myself. I welcome and invite myself to this experience, to my experience that I am having now. I ask that all doorways of windows be open to all wisdom and information and knowledge that I may need in this experience that I am having now, that it be offered and be brought to the now, here with me. And I thank you, and it's done, and so it is now. So you can do variations on that, but let me just give you a couple things and then I'm out of here. Boom. I may give an actual tobacco offering on the ground in a circle, in a medicine wheel. Cornmeal works, sage, whatever you have. I've even used ground up bud. I value green medicine, so the earth, it's a good gift for the earth if I need it as an offering. Or sometimes I'll do a tobacco prayer smoke. Since I haven't gone through the ceremony yet for the pipe carrier, I have a little of tobacco smoke after to seal the deal of the prayer. So that's something that you would offer after. You can specifically ask for things you need, or that the 7-directional prayer can just be an opening to something else, or a way to connect you and center you and balance you in the moment. So what it does is it turns you into a giant energy vortex. After 25 years of doing that, 5 years ago, I, call to the east, starts to the south, to the west, to the north, starts that clockwise circular pattern, folks. Bam, call to the earth. Boom, pivot on the earth. Call to the star nations. Boom, expand out. Then connect it. Connect that energy vortex here and open it up. So what happens is you got this pivot, and then you've got this, you become this giant energy vortex that you're an energy field at that point. That is all you are, is pure generating power. And that is what 25 years of messing around with it taught me. So a lot of these practices, they seem like not important or pretty humbling, and they do things that if you do them right and you do them with intention and you do them daily, will blow your mind. And they've been taught to the indigenous people for a reason. And we need to listen to what they have to say. They have the prophecies of what needs to happen now. We're at a pivotal point. We're not for sure if we're going to make it. So we can do this like Bavado, my teacher says. We can do this in the worst possible way, or we can do it in the greatest way. But the choice is each person, each individual has to make that choice. And there's no one that's going to save you. And you have to get out of your chair. You have to turn the TV off. Get out in your community and start participating. So anyway, I am Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. Now you kind of have a little bit of a history about me. If you would like to have private sessions with me or support me in any way, you can find my website on the, hopefully soon we'll have the Project Camelot TV network. We'll have our webpage up. Also, hopefully underneath these videos, you'll be able to find websites. I have two websites, consciousofeconomics.com and the Ministry of Consciousness Nevada.org. Both of them have pages for seated shamanic sessions, and I offer those long distance by Skype video call. And it's free calling if you get a username on Skype. But I have to see people. I've only just expanded this out to people internationally in the last 2 years. But if you're interested in having a session with me, I have also 25 certifications in alternative modalities, and I am a certified medical intuitive, and through the I think it's the Medical Intuitive National Association. So, yep, you can support me there. Just contact me and we'll book you an appointment and we'll get you shifting and we'll get you through whatever you need to get through. Or even just make an upgrade. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope I didn't overwhelm you, and I hope that you're still kind of asleep. Might have been too much information. You might have to watch this several times. And in the future, I will have some solo shows. I'm going to also have lots of amazing guests that are in alignment with who and what I am, and that I believe they are doing the right and perfect work here on the planet. And also, hopefully I'll be doing my farm builds and being able to bring that information to you. All right, and ceremonies too. Hopefully we hope to have people on the show who are doing ceremonies ceremonies were not allowed till some people recently. Some that's really still closed doors. No photographs, no phones, no computers, no video footage. But there are some Native American or First Nation, original people, Aboriginal people that are now starting to decide that, people need to see these practices, and that we need to be open. We need to share this information in order to heal Earth, heal our home, and the original mother. So hopefully we'll be able to share some footage with you in the future as well on some of my shows. So love and light. And I always tell people, grow food, be free, and live for a living. Until then, stay sustainable, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.